The Kalthar Empire had always been untouchable. For centuries, its rule stretched across the stars, and no force dared challenge its might. The emperor, sitting on his grand throne, had never known what it meant to be afraid. He ruled with absolute power, his armies the strongest in the galaxy. But that was before humans came. Now, with every passing day, the Empire's grip on the galaxy loosened. The humans, with their strange ships and fearless hearts, were tearing through the Empire's defenses. The Emperor watched in disbelief as his fleets were destroyed one by one. How could this happen? How could a simple, unimportant world like Earth be such a threat? The humans had a secret weapon, but it wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't their ships or their technology. It was their people. Each human, whether a soldier, a farmer, or a scientist, fought with everything they had. They were fighting for their survival, for their freedom. And that made them powerful in ways the Empire could never understand. The Emperor was furious. How dare these inferior humans challenge his throne? The galaxy belonged to the Kalthar, not these insignificant creatures. He ordered his generals to prepare for a final assault, an attack that would crush the human forces once and for all. "Send every ship we have," the Emperor commanded, his voice cold and commanding. "We will destroy Earth. We will show them what it means to challenge the might of the Kalthar Empire." The Emperor's generals, though worried, followed his orders. They knew that if they failed, their own lives would be at risk. With the Emperor's forces gathered, they set their course for Earth. The battle for the throne would begin. As the massive Kalthar fleet approached Earth's orbit, the humans prepared for the final fight. Their dark matter warships, newly constructed and still a mystery to the Empire, were ready. They had been designed to withstand anything the Kalthar could throw at them. The humans, though fewer in number, had learned how to fight like no one else. They knew the Empire's weaknesses, and they had come prepared. On Earth, the human generals gathered in the command center. They were nervous, but they also knew they had no choice but to fight. The Kalthar had pushed them this far, and now they had to finish what they started. "This is it," General Marcus, the leader of the human forces, said. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the pressure he felt. "We have one chance to end this. We fight, or we lose everything." His crew nodded. There was no turning back now. The Kalthar fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, their ships towering over the planet. The Empire's commanders were confident. They had faced countless enemies before, and none had ever stood up to them for long. They knew that their firepower was unmatched, and they expected the human fleet to fall easily before them. But when the battle began, the Kalthar were met with a surprise they never expected. The human warships didn't act like anything they had seen before. Instead of charging headfirst into battle, the humans scattered, using the darkness of space to their advantage. They split their forces into smaller, unpredictable groups, making it nearly impossible for the Kalthar to target them all at once. The Kalthar fired their weapons, expecting to tear through the human ships with ease. But the humans had engineered their warships with advanced shields and weapon systems that absorbed the Empire's energy blasts. The human ships darted around the Kalthar forces, striking with lightning speed, then disappearing into the darkness before the Empire could respond. The Empire's commanders were losing control. Where did they go? One of them shouted. "They're everywhere. How are they doing this?" The humans were using tactics the Empire had never seen. They didn't just fight. They outsmarted their enemies. The Kalthar ships, with all their size and firepower, couldn't keep up with the humans' agility. Every time they thought they had a clear shot, a human ship would appear from behind them or from below, striking fast before disappearing again. On the ground, the situation was no different. The Kalthar had landed troops on Earth, expecting to overpower the human defenses with their superior numbers. But when they hit the surface, they were met with a fierce resistance unlike anything they had encountered. Humans didn't just fight. They adapted, using the terrain, the cities, and their knowledge of their planet to their advantage. "Move. Push them back." A Kalfar officer shouted, but his words were drowned out by the sound of explosions. Humans in powered armor raced across the battlefield, their weapons blazing as they tore through the Empire's forces. The Kalfar were bigger, stronger, but the humans fought with a determination the Kalfar couldn't understand. They were fighting for their homes, their families, and their future. As the battle raged on, the Kalfar Empire began to feel the weight of their mistake. They had underestimated the humans. They had thought them weak, primitive, and easy to crush. But the humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to prove that they deserved to be a part of the galaxy. And now, they were doing it with unmatched skill. The Kalfar generals were losing hope. Their forces were being outmaneuvered at every turn. "What is this?" one of them asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "How can they be so strong? How can they fight like this?" General Marcus watched the battle from Earth's command center. His eyes narrowed with focus. He knew the Empire was struggling to keep up. The tide was turning in their favor, but they had to press on. "Keep pushing," he ordered his commanders. "We're close. We can do this." Above Earth, the Kalfar fleet was falling apart. The human warships, small but fierce, were picking off the larger Kalfar ships one by one. The Empire's command ships were taking direct hits, and the Kalfar forces began to scatter, retreating in confusion. In the midst of the chaos, General Marcus looked up at the stars. For the first time, he allowed himself a small, quiet smile. The Kalfar had come to crush them, to destroy Earth, and take the throne of the galaxy. But now, it seemed the tables had turned. Humanity was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to take their place in the stars. As the last of the Kalfar ships retreated, the humans stood victorious. The battle for Earth and for the throne of the galaxy had been won. But this was just the beginning. The Kalfar Empire would have to learn that humans were not to be underestimated. And soon, they would learn that humanity's fight for freedom would not stop until they ruled the stars. The Kalfar Empire, with its centuries of power and dominance, had never imagined that something as insignificant as Earth could threaten its rule. For generations, the Empire had been the top power in the galaxy, controlling vast swaths of space. Its citizens were used to living in luxury, their military was feared across the stars, and the idea of a threat to their throne seemed laughable. But the arrival of the human fleet changed everything. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Kalfar scouts reported an unusual fleet of ships approaching from the farthest reaches of the galaxy. At first, they dismissed the ships as nothing more than a group of explorers, perhaps from a small, unimportant species. But as the ships grew larger and closer, the reality set in. These were no explorers. These were humans. The Kalfar High Council laughed at the news. "Humans," one of the council members said, chuckling. "How could such a primitive species pose a threat to us? They've never even left their own solar system." But the laughter quickly died as a series of reports came in. These humans were not like anything the Empire had faced before. Their ships were not as advanced as the Kalfar's, but they were incredibly resilient. The humans had somehow developed weapons that could punch through the Empire's strongest defenses, and their fleet was fast, much faster than anything the Empire had seen. The Empire's response was swift. General Duros, one of the Kalfar Empire's most skilled commanders, was tasked with handling the human threat. He scoffed at the idea that a species as young and primitive as humanity could pose any danger to the might of the Empire. He sent a fleet of warships to meet them, confident that the humans would quickly be crushed. As General Duros' fleet neared, the human ships did not retreat or cower. Instead, they engaged the Kalfar ships head-on, but not in the way anyone expected. They didn't rush forward in a straight line like most of the enemies the Kalfar had faced. The humans moved unpredictably, darting around the Kalfar ships with incredible speed. Their ships seemed almost alive, as if they could sense the movements of the enemy before they happened. The Kalfar fleet opened fire, but the humans' warships were too fast, too agile. The Calthar's laser blasts missed again and again as the human ships danced around them. And when the humans did strike, their attacks were precise, hitting weak points on the Calthar ships that no one had expected. It wasn't long before the first Calthar ship exploded in a fiery blaze, and the rest of the fleet began to panic. General Uros watched in shock. What is this?" he muttered to himself. "How are they doing this?" He had underestimated humanity. What he didn't realize was that Earth's history had been a constant struggle for survival. From the wild beasts of early Earth to the wars fought between nations, humans had always fought to survive. And now, they were bringing that same determination to the stars. The Calthar fleet was slowly being picked apart, one ship at a time. It wasn't just the humans' tactics that were surprising, it was their technology. Despite their seeming primitiveness, the humans had developed weapons and shields that could stand up to the Calthar's best. Their ships were powered by something the Calthar had never seen before: dark matter, an energy so powerful that it defied the laws of physics. The humans' warships absorbed the Calthar's energy blasts, turning them into their own power. The battle continued, with the humans slipping in and out of the Calthar lines, hitting hard and fast. The Calthar, though superior in size and number, could not keep up. General Duro's confidence began to crumble, and the first signs of panic spread through his fleet. "Retreat," he finally shouted, realizing that the longer they fought, the more they lost. "Get back to the Empire. We need reinforcements." The remaining Calthar ships turned and fled, leaving the humans victorious. The Calthar fleet had been shattered, their forces in disarray. The humans, though victorious, did not stop. They followed the retreating fleet, hunting down the stragglers and sending a message to the Empire. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Back in the heart of the Calthar Empire, news of the defeat spread like wildfire. The High Council, once certain of their unchallenged power, now found themselves in a panic. The humans had fought back, and they had won. The council members were furious, demanding answers. "How did this happen?" one of them shouted. "How could we lose to such an inferior species?" "General Uros failed us," another council member said, glaring at the holographic display showing the human ship's movements. "We need a new plan. The humans cannot be allowed to get any stronger." The Emperor, silent up until now, finally spoke. His voice was cold and steady, though it carried an edge of fear. "We will send everything we have. The humans will learn their place. They will not threaten our throne." But even as the Emperor spoke, a small part of him couldn't ignore the unsettling truth. The humans had just begun to show their power. And now, they had the attention of the entire Empire. The Calthar had never faced an enemy like this before, and the fear that had begun to creep into the High Council's hearts was only the beginning. Meanwhile, on Earth, the human generals and their leaders were celebrating their first victory. General Marcus stood on a balcony, looking out at the stars. His heart was pounding with excitement, but he knew that this was only the beginning. The Calthar Empire was massive, and they would not stop until they had destroyed humanity. "We've taken the first step," Marcus said, turning to his officers. "But now we have to keep moving. They won't just let us win. We've got their attention. Now we need to make sure they never forget that we're a threat." The humans were far from defeated. They had shown that they could stand against the might of the Calthar Empire. And now, they were ready for the next battle. The Calthar had underestimated humanity, and that mistake would cost them dearly. As the first human victory echoed across the galaxy, the Empire began to feel the weight of its arrogance. And the humans, they were just getting started. The Calthar Empire had never been so shaken. News of their defeat at the hands of humanity spread like wildfire across their vast domain. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Empire, which had once ruled the stars with an iron fist, felt the sting of fear. The humans, once thought to be insignificant, had shown they could fight back, and they had won. The very idea that a small primitive species could challenge the greatest empire in the galaxy was an insult the Kalfar could not bear. In the High Council chambers, the leaders of the empire gathered. Their faces were hard, their eyes filled with anger and humiliation. The defeat of General Ruros had shattered the empire's sense of invincibility, and now they were desperate to regain control. "We cannot allow this to go unpunished," one of the council members said, his voice sharp. "The humans have humiliated us. We must crush them before they get any stronger." "But how?" another council member asked. "They have proven to be more resourceful than we anticipated. Our fleets were overwhelmed by their agility and unpredictable tactics. We cannot fight them the same way we fought other enemies." The emperor sat in silence, his golden eyes narrowed as he watched the arguments unfold. He had spent years building the empire into a force that no one could challenge. And now, this tiny species had torn through his military like paper. He clenched his fists in frustration. "Enough," the emperor finally roared. "You are all weak. We are the Kalfar. The galaxy bends to our will. We will send everything we have. We will show these humans that no one can stand against us." The room went silent. The council members nodded in agreement, fear creeping into their eyes. They knew that defying the emperor's orders would mean death. They had no choice but to obey. "We will send the Death Armada," the emperor continued, his voice cold with fury. "We will crush Earth and show the galaxy that the Kalfar Empire will not be challenged." The Death Armada was the Kalfar's most powerful fleet, a force of unimaginable size and strength. It had been reserved for the most difficult of conquests, and the emperor had never sent it to battle before. But now he would. The humans would regret ever challenging his rule. Meanwhile, on Earth, the human forces were preparing for the worst. They knew that the Kalfar would retaliate. The emperor would not let the humiliation go unanswered. General Marcus and his commanders had no illusions about the coming battle. The Kalfar would send everything they had, and they would come for Earth with all their might. "We can't let our guard down," Marcus said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "The Kalfar will come for us, but we've beaten them once. We can do it again." His commanders nodded, but there was a sense of unease in the air. The Kalfar Empire was vast, and their military was beyond anything the humans had ever seen. Still, humanity had a single advantage. They fought not just for victory, but for survival. The humans were resourceful, determined, and fearless. As the days passed, the humans prepared for the Kalfar's inevitable assault. The dark matter warships were upgraded, their weapons tested, and their crews drilled in battle tactics. The human alliance grew stronger as more and more species joined their cause. But even with all their preparations, no one could deny the looming threat of the Death Armada. The question wasn't if it would come, it was when. The Kalfar were relentless. They didn't just want to defeat humanity, they wanted to erase them completely. The humans had embarrassed the Empire, and they would pay for it in blood. Finally, the day arrived. The sensors on Earth's command center detected the massive fleet approaching. General Marcus stood before a holographic display, his face grim as he watched the data flood in. The Kalfar had come. "The Death Armada," one of his officers muttered. "It's here." Marcus took a deep breath. "Get the fleet ready. We'll face them head-on. Prepare for battle." As the human ships lined up in Earth's orbit, ready to face the oncoming storm, the sky seemed to darken with the shadow of the Kalfar's might. The Death Armada was unlike anything the humans had seen before. It was an ocean of warships, each one massive, armed to the teeth with weaponry designed to annihilate entire planets. The Empire's fleet was a wall of destruction, each ship bigger and more powerful than the last. But the humans were not afraid. They had faced impossible odds before, and now they would face them again. The battle began in a blur of light and explosions. The human ships moved with speed and precision, their dark matter engines propelling them through the chaos. The Calthar unleashed wave after wave of destruction, their laser blasts lighting up space like a storm of fire. But despite the overwhelming odds, the humans did not break. Their ships dodged and weaved through the barrage, striking back with incredible force. The Calthar fleet, with all its size and power, was not prepared for this kind of fight. The humans' warships, though smaller, were faster and more agile. The Calthar's massive guns could not keep up with the human ships' unpredictable movements. Each time the Empire thought they had the upper hand, the humans would strike from an unexpected direction, landing blows that sent Calthar ships tumbling through space. General Marcus watched the battle unfold with a mixture of hope and dread. The Calthar were relentless, their ships continuing to pour fire onto the human fleet. But the humans fought with a fierceness the Calthar had never expected. For every ship they lost, they destroyed 2 of the Empire's. "Keep pushing," Marcus shouted into his comms. "Don't let them break our lines. We can win this." The battle raged on for hours, and with each passing minute, it became clear. The Calthar had underestimated humanity. The Empire's fleet was starting to show signs of weakness. Their once imposing ships were being picked off one by one, their commanders losing control. The Death Armada, which had seemed unbeatable, was beginning to falter. But just as the humans began to taste victory, the unexpected happened. A new wave of Calthar reinforcements arrived. Even more warships, more firepower, more destruction. It was clear that the Calthar would not stop. They were determined to finish what they started. Marcus gritted his teeth. This battle was far from over. But humanity was not going to back down. Not now. Not ever. As the second wave of the Calthar Armada engaged, Marcus made a silent vow to himself and his people. This time, the Calthar will learn that humanity is not something to be trifled with. The battle between humanity and the Calthar Empire had escalated beyond anything anyone had imagined. The Calthar had sent their Death Armada to crush the human fleet, to erase humanity from the galaxy. Yet despite overwhelming odds, the humans were not backing down. They fought like they always had, resilient, determined, and with a ferocity born from their very will to survive. The Death Armada had been the Empire's greatest weapon, a fleet so powerful that it could obliterate entire planets with a single strike. But now, its power was being tested by a species they had once written off as insignificant. The humans' dark matter warships had proven to be an unexpected challenge for the Calthar. Their weapons, though not as powerful as the Empire's, were versatile and deadly. And the humans' greatest advantage was their ability to think on their feet. Unlike the rigid, predictable tactics of the Calthar, humans adapted, reacted, and fought in ways the Empire couldn't anticipate. General Marcus stood at the command center aboard the human flagship, watching as the battle unfolded in front of him. The holographic display showed an ocean of Calthar ships closing in on the human fleet. Despite the growing number of enemy ships, the humans were holding their ground. "General, we've lost contact with the eastern flank," one of his officers reported, her voice tight with stress. "The Calthar are pushing through." Marcus clenched his jaw. He had expected this. The Calthar were relentless, and their fleet was massive. But the humans had one thing the Calthar lacked: unity. Across the galaxy, humanity had come together to fight for their survival, and they would not be beaten. "Send reinforcements to the eastern flank," Marcus ordered. "We can't afford to lose any more ground. Hold them back, no matter what." The crew scrambled to relay the orders, but Marcus's mind was already working on the bigger picture. This battle, though intense, was not just about the victory. It was about sending a message. The Calthar had underestimated humanity at every turn. They had thought humans were too weak, too primitive. But now, they were learning that Earth's people could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever seen. On the battlefield, human ships weaved and dodged, firing precision shots that tore through the Calthar fleet. But despite their resilience, the Calthar were pushing hard. The Death Armada was slowly gaining ground. Then came the moment that would change everything. A massive Calthar battleship, larger than any the humans had encountered, appeared at the front of the line. It was a ship of legend, known across the Empire as the Eclipse, a warship so powerful it was said to be able to wipe out entire fleets with a single blast. Its presence on the battlefield sent a shockwave through the human commanders. "That's it," one of the officers whispered, fear creeping into his voice. "The Eclipse. It's here." Marcus stared at the massive ship on the hologram. Its hull was made of the rarest and strongest materials in the galaxy, and its weaponry could annihilate everything in its path. If they couldn't stop it, the entire human fleet would be obliterated. "We need to take it down," Marcus said, his voice cold and calm. "Prepare the dark matter torpedoes. We're going after it." But as his crew scrambled to arm their weapons, Marcus knew that the battle was far from over. The Eclipse wasn't just a symbol of the Calthar's power. It was a symbol of their arrogance. The humans had already beaten them once, and now the Empire was about to learn the price of that arrogance. The human fleet turned to face the giant Calthar ship, a growing firestorm of battle ahead of them. The Calthar unleashed a torrent of laser fire, blanketing the human ships with a storm of deadly beams. Human ships darted through the barrage, taking damage but staying on course. Every shot fired from the Eclipse was a reminder of how powerful the Calthar were, but the humans would not be intimidated. "Target the Eclipse's engines," Marcus ordered. "If we can cripple it, we can take it down." As the human ships closed in, their dark matter weapons powered up, glowing with an eerie energy. The Calthar's shields flickered in the face of the concentrated blasts, but the power of the human torpedoes wasn't to be underestimated. With a massive explosion, the first round of torpedoes struck the Eclipse's main engine. The Calthar ship shook violently, the shockwave rippling through space. The Calthar commanders on board the Eclipse scrambled to regain control, but it was too late. The humans had exploited the Eclipse's greatest weakness, its engine core. With another well-placed strike, the core ruptured, sending a brilliant explosion through the ship. The massive warship shuddered as the blast took out its propulsion system. But the battle wasn't over. As the Eclipse began to drift, its remaining fleet pushed forward with renewed aggression. The Calthar were desperate. They wouldn't let their pride be shattered by a single loss. The Death Armada continued its assault, and the human fleet was slowly being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. "Push them back," Marcus roared as his fleet continued to fight with everything they had. The Calthar had thrown their strongest force at humanity, and yet the humans were still standing. It was a testament to their strength and unity, to the belief that no matter the odds, they would fight for their survival. In the chaos of battle, a new wave of human ships entered the fray, ships from the other colonies that had rallied to Earth's side. The humans were not alone. As the reinforcements arrived, the Calthar began to falter. They had expected humanity to break under pressure, to fall before their might. But they were wrong. The humans had become stronger with every battle, with every challenge. The Calthar Death Armada, once thought to be unstoppable, began to retreat. The Empire's ships, battered and broken, started to withdraw. The human fleet pursued, striking back at the Calthar with every ounce of energy they had left. The battle for the throne had only just begun. The Calthar might have been the rulers of the galaxy for centuries, but they had underestimated the one thing they could never defeat, the will of humanity. And now, with the death of the Eclipse, the Calthar would know that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. General Marcus stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the Calthar retreat. His heart was still pounding from the battle, but he knew this wasn't the end. The Calthar would return, but so would humanity. This war had just begun, and the humans had made their mark. The Calthar might have the Empire, but humanity had something far more powerful, the will to fight, no matter the cost. "We've won today," Marcus said quietly, his gaze focused on the stars. "But we're not finished yet. The Empire will learn. Humans don't give up. Not now. Not ever. The battle for the throne was far from over, but humanity had proven one thing. They would never be crushed. The battle had raged on for hours, but finally, the Kalthar Empire was on the verge of collapse. Their Death Armada, once a symbol of their unshakable power, had been shattered by the relentless force of humanity. The human fleet, battered and bruised, had pushed the Kalthar back to the edge of their own borders. The Kalthar were retreating, but it was clear now. They had no choice but to face the truth. Their empire was crumbling. General Marcus stood at the command center, looking out at the holographic display that showed the human fleet in pursuit of the retreating Kalthar. His heart was still pounding from the battle, but he couldn't allow himself to relax. This was only the beginning. The Kalthar had underestimated humanity, but they would soon learn that their mistake came at a high cost. "General, the Kalthar fleet is pulling back," an officer reported. "They're abandoning the battle." Marcus didn't respond immediately. He knew the Kalthar were proud, ruthless, and would never surrender easily. They were retreating now, but they wouldn't give up the fight so quickly. Still, humanity had proven something important today. They were not to be underestimated. "We've broken their lines," Marcus said finally, his voice firm. "But we can't stop now. We need to finish this." The human fleet advanced, pushing forward through the vast expanse of space, closing the distance between them and the heart of the Kalthar Empire. It wasn't just about defeating them now. It was about taking their throne, their power, and showing the galaxy that humanity was no longer a species to be ignored or feared. The Kalthar had ruled for millennia, but humanity had shown them that it was time for a new order. As the human fleet drew closer to the Kalthar homeworld, the Emperor of the Kalthar sat on his throne in his palace, staring out at the stars. The reports from the battlefield had been grim. His fleet was in retreat. The humans had defied every expectation and turned the tide of battle. The Kalthar had thought their empire was untouchable, but the humans had shattered that illusion. "We can still fight back," the Emperor muttered to himself, his voice shaking with both anger and fear. "We can still destroy them." But deep down, he knew it was over. His empire, once the mightiest in the galaxy, was falling apart before his eyes. The humans had made it clear. They were not the weak, primitive species the Kalthar had once dismissed. They were warriors, survivors, and now they were coming for the throne. The Kalthar Emperor summoned his generals to his side. "Prepare the last line of defense," he ordered. "We will fight until the last ship is destroyed. We will not let the humans take what is ours." But it was too late. Humanity had already outsmarted the Kalthar. General Marcus and his fleet arrived at the Kalthar homeworld, where the Empire's most powerful defenses awaited. The planet was surrounded by a ring of powerful warships, and countless defensive systems had been set in place to protect the Kalthar capital. But the humans were ready. "Sir, we've received word from the fleet," one of Marcus's officers reported. "The Kalthar are preparing their final defense. They're deploying their most powerful weapons." Marcus nodded grimly. The Kalthar would go down fighting, that much was certain. But the humans had something the Kalthar lacked: determination. They had fought for every inch of ground they had gained, and they would not stop now. "Prepare for the final assault," Marcus ordered. "Target their command center. If we take out their leadership, the rest will crumble." The human fleet launched their final attack. Dark matter weapons rained down on the Kalthar defenses, tearing through their ships and stations with terrifying precision. The Kalthar retaliated with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. Humanity's warships, faster and more adaptable, dodged their shots and struck back with deadly force. The Kalthar's massive warships, once thought to be invincible, were falling one by one. "Sir," an officer said, "we've broken through their defenses. We're moving towards the Emperor's palace." Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction. The Kalthar had tried to crush humanity, but now the tables had turned. The humans had reached the heart of the Empire, and the Kalfar would have to face the consequences of their arrogance. The Emperor's palace stood tall on the planet's surface, its grand halls and towering spires a symbol of Kalfar pride. But now it was nothing more than a target. Marcus led the charge, his fleet descending toward the palace with unstoppable force. The Kalfar forces on the ground fought desperately to protect their emperor, but it was clear that their resistance was futile. As Marcus's fleet landed on the planet's surface, the final confrontation began. The Kalfar emperor, surrounded by his closest guards, stood ready to defend his throne. But it was too late. Humanity had already claimed victory. The Kalfar emperor stood before General Marcus, his face twisted with rage. "You think you can take our throne? You think you can replace us?" Marcus looked the emperor in the eyes. "You had your chance. The galaxy is changing. The throne is ours now." With those words, Marcus made his final move, ordering the destruction of the emperor's palace. The Kalfar's reign had come to an end. As the Kalfar Empire crumbled around him, General Marcus turned to his officers, a sense of finality settling in. "We've won," he said. "Humanity has risen." The galaxy would never be the same. The humans had proven themselves to be a force to be reckoned with, and the Kalfar's throne had been claimed by those they once thought weak. But now, humanity's time had come, and they would rule the stars. The galaxy had changed forever. The Kalfar Empire, once a towering power that had dominated the stars for millennia, was no more. Its throne, once considered unshakable, now stood empty. In its place, humanity had risen, against all odds, against all expectations. General Marcus, the leader of the human forces that had brought down the Kalfar, stood at the helm of the human fleet, watching as the ruins of the Kalfar capital fell away behind them. The once proud world was now a charred, desolate place, a symbol of the old order being erased. The stars that had long been under the Kalfar's rule were now looking at humanity, waiting to see what would come next. The fight had been hard. The Kalfar's resistance had been fierce, but humanity's will had proven stronger. And now, the galaxy was at a crossroads. "This isn't just about taking the throne," Marcus said to his senior officers aboard the flagship. His voice was firm, but his mind raced with the weight of what had just transpired. "We have to make sure that what comes next is different. The Kalfar ruled with fear and oppression. We can't make the same mistakes. This galaxy belongs to everyone now." His words hung in the air as the officers nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The humans had won, but they had no intention of ruling with the same brutal hand the Kalfar had. Humanity's victory wasn't just about taking control, it was about bringing change. Bringing peace to a galaxy that had been ruled by one empire's iron fist for too long. But peace would not come easily. The galaxy was a vast, diverse place, and not everyone would welcome the humans' new order. Many species had suffered under the Kalfar's regime, and some feared that the humans would simply replace one tyrant with another. On the bridge of the flagship, Marcus turned to his officers. "Send word to the remaining Kalfar loyalists. Let them know the Empire is gone, and their fight is over. But we offer them a chance to join a new order, one built on cooperation, not conquest." The decision was bold. The Kalfar had been ruthless conquerors, and to offer them a chance at redemption seemed like a risky move. But Marcus believed it was the only way to ensure lasting peace. He had seen the destruction caused by unchecked power, and he didn't want humanity to fall into the same trap. As the human fleet made its way across the galaxy, they encountered more of the former Kalfar-controlled planets. Some of these worlds had long been oppressed, their resources drained, their people enslaved. The humans offered them a choice: to remain under human protection, or to join in the creation of a new intergalactic council. The message was clear: there would be no more empires, no more domination. The galaxy would be a place where all species could thrive, side by side. But not everyone was eager to accept this new way of life. On a distant planet, the remnants of the Kalfar military gathered. They were led by a new leader, a former general who had fought alongside the Emperor in the final battle. His name was Turan, and he had sworn to bring about the Calthar's revenge. The loss of their empire had been a bitter blow, and he was determined to reclaim the throne, no matter the cost. "We will rebuild," Turan declared to his followers, his eyes burning with anger. "The humans may have won this battle, but we will take back what is ours. The galaxy will tremble before the Calthar once again." But the Calthar loyalists were divided. Some saw the wisdom in Marcus's proposal, recognizing that the galaxy had changed. Others, like Turan, were blinded by hatred and pride, unwilling to let go of their past. Turan's words ignited a fire among those who still believed in the Calthar's supremacy, and they would stop at nothing to bring the Calthar back to power. Back aboard the human flagship, Marcus was well aware of the brewing conflict. The galaxy was not ready to be ruled by a single empire again. The Calthar had made that clear. The human fleet had to prepare for a new kind of battle, one not just against a fleet, but against the very ideals of conquest and supremacy. "General, we've received reports from several worlds," an officer said, breaking Marcus from his thoughts. "The Calthar loyalists are amassing, preparing for war. Turan has united the remaining forces." Marcus nodded grimly. "We knew this was coming. We've broken the Calthar, but we haven't broken their ideology. They still believe in their empire. It's up to us to show them that there is no room for empires anymore." The challenge ahead would be monumental. The Calthar loyalists had gathered strength, and Turan's ambition would not be easily stopped. But Marcus had something Turan didn't: unity. Humanity was united in its purpose to build a better future, and they would fight with everything they had to ensure that future became a reality. The human fleet turned toward the growing threat. The stars ahead of them glittered with the promise of battle, but Marcus knew this fight was different. It wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about proving that humanity's new order, one based on freedom, equality, and cooperation, was stronger than the galaxy's old ways of fear and domination. "We fight not just for our survival," Marcus said to his crew, standing tall in front of the command center. "We fight for the future, for a galaxy where no species is oppressed, where no one rules with an iron fist. This is what we're fighting for." As the human fleet prepared for the final showdown with the Calthar loyalists, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was the true test of humanity's strength. It was no longer about just defeating the Calthar. It was about proving to the galaxy, and to themselves, that they could lead with compassion, fairness, and unity. The galaxy was in chaos. The old powers had fallen, and new ones were rising. But humanity's place in this new galaxy was still uncertain. What would they become? Would they embrace the ideals of peace and cooperation, or would they fall into the same traps that had ensnared the Calthar before them? The final battle loomed, and its outcome would shape the fate of the galaxy for generations to come. One thing was certain: humanity had already proven they were a force to be reckoned with. The question was no longer whether they could survive. The question now was whether they could lead. And if they did, would they rise to the challenge, or would they fall into the same mistakes as the empire they had destroyed? The final confrontation was at hand. Humanity's fleet, battered but resolute, faced the Calthar loyalists in a wide expanse of space near a forgotten star system. On one side stood General Marcus, the leader of the human forces, unified, determined, and guided by a sense of justice that had carried them this far. On the other side was Turan, the Calthar general who had rallied the remnants of their empire, his heart filled with rage and thirst for revenge. The two armies, so different in purpose and ideology, now faced each other, the outcome of their confrontation poised to determine the galaxy's future. This battle would not just be about military superiority. It would be about the fate of every species in the galaxy, and whether the dream of a unified, peaceful future could survive the shadow of the Calthar's brutal empire. As the human fleet aligned with the stars, Marcus stood on the bridge of the flagship, his face grave but calm. He had seen the fear in the eyes of the galaxy's people as the Calthar's remnants threatened to rise again. But humanity had never been about fear. It had always been about overcoming the impossible. And now, with the future of the galaxy hanging in the balance, it was up to them to prove that their way would not only prevail, it would lead the galaxy into a new dawn. "General," an officer called, snapping Marcus from his thoughts. "The Calthar fleet has deployed their warships. They're prepared for a full assault." Marcus nodded slowly. "They will fight until the end. But we have something they don't. Unity." The human fleet had fought countless battles before this one, but none as important as the one that was about to begin. The Calthar, for all their power and fearsome reputation, had never known the unity that humanity now possessed. From every corner of the galaxy, species once oppressed by the Calthar had come together with one common purpose: to ensure that the old ways of conquest and subjugation would never rise again. The space around them shimmered as the battle commenced. The Calthar fleet advanced with terrifying speed, their warships cutting through the void like jagged knives. Turan's forces had gathered every scrap of their military might, and they fought fiercely, unwilling to accept the end of the Empire. Their weapons were relentless, their tactics precise. But it was clear that they were fighting for more than just survival. They were fighting for the resurrection of an old dream of dominance. Humanity's fleet moved with precision, every ship in perfect coordination. The once divided species of Earth had come together with a single purpose: to protect the future of the galaxy, not through domination, but through cooperation and freedom. "All units, engage," Marcus's voice rang out, and the battle erupted in a fury of explosions, laser fire, and plasma blasts. For hours, the fight raged. The human fleet showed no signs of faltering, their tactics honed by years of war. They were disciplined, working in harmony, using every advantage they had gained in the previous battles. The Calthar, despite their might, were struggling. Their once dominant forces were now being pushed back, cornered by the relentless will of humanity. On the battlefield, General Turan fought with desperation. He had lost everything: the Calthar throne, their empire, and now their final chance to reclaim it. His eyes burned with fury as he commanded his fleet to press on. He could not accept defeat, not when so much was at stake. The Calthar had ruled for millennia. To lose now would be to lose everything. But as the battle drew on, Turan's desperation began to show. His fleet, once united under a single banner, began to fracture. Some of his commanders, seeing the inevitable, began to hesitate, their loyalty to the old ways shaken. They saw what Marcus and humanity were fighting for, and some wondered if they were on the wrong side. Turan was not ready to surrender, not yet. He continued to rally his forces, pushing them further into the fray. But his actions were growing more erratic, driven by emotion rather than reason. Meanwhile, Marcus was focused on the long game. The battle was crucial, but it was the aftermath that would determine everything. Victory was within their grasp, but it would only be true victory if humanity could prove that they were not just conquerors, but leaders of a new era. He knew the Calthar loyalists couldn't be defeated by force alone. They needed to be shown a new way. "General," an officer called, "we've breached their command ship. Turan is still aboard, but his fleet is losing ground." Marcus's heart raced. This was the moment of truth. The Calthar had never been ones to surrender, but now they were being forced to face the reality of their situation. If Turan could be captured, the last vestiges of the Calthar Empire would fall. He stood up from his chair, determination etched on his face. "Prepare a team. We're going in." Marcus led the charge to the Calthar command ship, a massive, imposing structure that seemed to defy the laws of physics itself. The closer they got, the more they could feel the tension in the air. This was the last stronghold of the Calthar's power, and its fall would mark the end of their reign. The human soldiers fought their way through the ship, facing fierce resistance from Turan's elite guard. But they were unstoppable. Humanity's strength was not in their weapons or their tactics. It was in their unity, in their belief that the future could be different. Finally, Marcus and his team reached the heart of the command ship. Turan stood there, his back to them, staring out at the battlefield. The fury in his eyes was palpable. "You think you've won," Turan growled, turning to face Marcus. "You think you can replace the Kalthar." Marcus stood tall, his eyes steady. "It's not about replacing anyone, Turan. It's about building something better. Something the galaxy deserves." Turan's hand hovered over the control panel, his finger trembling. He had the power to launch one final strike, to take everything down with him. But in that moment, he hesitated. He looked at the battle unfolding below, his empire crumbling, and the future of the galaxy at stake. "Make your choice, Turan," Marcus said. "The galaxy is watching." Turan's eyes flickered with uncertainty. The weight of his empire's fall pressed down on him, and he knew he could no longer hold on to the past. The Kalthar's time was over. It was time for the galaxy to move forward, and it would do so with or without him. With a slow, deliberate motion, Turan lowered his hand, signaling the end of the Kalthar's fight. The command ship's lights dimmed, and the battle ceased. The galaxy had been saved, and the Kalthar Empire had fallen. The aftermath of the battle was swift. Turan was taken into custody, and the remaining Kalthar forces were given the choice to join the new Galactic Council or face exile. The message was clear. Humanity would lead, but they would lead with justice, not oppression. The war was over. The galaxy, though scared, was free. As General Marcus looked out at the stars, the weight of the moment settled on him. The Kalthar had been defeated, but it was not just a military victory. It was a victory for the ideals humanity had fought for: freedom, unity, and hope. Humanity had proven itself capable of more than just survival. They had proven themselves capable of leading the galaxy into a new era. And though the path ahead would be uncertain, one thing was clear: the future of the galaxy belonged to those who believed in something greater than themselves. Humanity had entered the galaxy's stage as conquerors, but they would leave it as something more. Guardians of a new age of peace. The dawn of a new era had come, and humanity had written its legacy in the stars.